What if I told you that one of the most loved internet stars wasn't a singer, an athlete, or even a Hollywood actor, but a judge? Yes, a judge, wearing a black robe, sitting behind a courtroom desk, ruling on cases that most people would consider boring. Parking tickets, speeding violations, and small city fines. But this wasn't an ordinary judge. This was Frank Caprio, a man who turned ordinary court cases into extraordinary lessons about kindness and humanity. Millions of people across the world didn't just know him, they admired him. They laughed with him, they cried with him, and they shared his videos with their families and friends. They called him the nicest judge in the world, a judge who became a global star. Frank Caprio didn't become famous for delivering harsh punishments or dramatic speeches. He became famous because he listened. He cared. He showed compassion at a level rarely seen in a courtroom. A single mom who couldn't afford her ticket, Caprio forgave her fine, reminding her to focus on her children first. A struggling student with no money to pay, he gave them a break, encouraging them to stay in school. A veteran who served the country, Caprio not only dismissed the case, but thanked them for their sacrifice. And then there were the children. Caprio loved inviting kids who came with their parents up to the bench. He would hand them the gavel and say, "Why don't you help me decide this case?" The kids would smile, the parents would laugh, and the courtroom, usually a place of stress, suddenly became filled with joy. Clips of these moments went viral on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. People from the United States to Asia, from Europe to Africa, all connected with the same feeling. This judge was different. The man behind the robe. Born in 1936 in Providence, Rhode Island, he grew up in a working-class Italian immigrant family. His father sold fruit from a cart to support the family. Life was far from easy, but it gave Frank a deep respect for ordinary people, the kind of people who would later stand in front of him in court. He worked as a teacher by day while attending law school at night. This balance of education and perseverance became part of who he was. To him, education wasn't just about books. It was about learning compassion, patience, and fairness. Caught in Providence, the birth of a legend. In 1985, Frank Caprio became chief judge of the Providence Municipal Court. At first, his courtroom was just like any other. But when a local TV station began filming cases, the world caught a glimpse of his unique style. The show Caught in Providence turned small, everyday cases into moments of humanity that resonated worldwide. Frank Caprio's life is the kind of story that reminds us greatness doesn't always come from wealth, power, or privilege. Sometimes it begins in the most ordinary of places, with a fruit cart, a hard-working family, and a boy who carried big dreams in his heart. In 1985, Frank Caprio was appointed chief judge of the Providence Municipal Court. At the time, it didn't seem like history in the making. To most people, it was just another city courtroom. Rows of wooden benches, stacks of case files, and a steady stream of parking tickets, speeding violations, and small disputes. Nothing glamorous. Nothing that would suggest this modest court in Rhode Island would one day capture the attention of millions around the world. But then something unexpected happened. A local TV station began filming his cases, airing them under the name Caught in Providence. What started as a small community project soon revealed something rare and extraordinary. People tuned in not just to see rulings. They tuned in to see Judge Frank Caprio himself. Why? Because he didn't act like the typical judge. By the time Caught in Providence became a viral sensation, Frank Caprio was more than just a local judge. He was a global example of what leadership with empathy looks like. From a modest courtroom in Providence, he reminded the world that every case is more than paperwork. It's a story. Every defendant is more than a violation. They're a human being. And every ruling can either push someone down or lift them up. That's why his legacy isn't just about legal decisions. It's about compassion made visible. It's about showing that kindness can live alongside authority, and that mercy has a place in justice. In 2022, the world received heartbreaking news. Judge Frank Caprio, the beloved figure from Caught in Providence, revealed that he had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. For millions who had come to see him not just as a judge, but as a symbol of kindness and humanity, the announcement was deeply personal. Fans from across the globe, people who had never set foot in Rhode Island, felt the weight of his words. Social media was flooded with prayers, messages, and stories. Some shared how watching his courtroom had given them hope during difficult times. Others told him directly that his compassion had restored their faith in justice, or even in humanity itself. For many, Judge Caprio wasn't just a man on a TV show. He was a grandfatherly figure, a moral compass, and a reminder that decency still existed in the world. What stood out most during this period wasn't the sadness of the diagnosis, but the grace and strength with which Judge Caprio handled it. Instead of retreating from the public eye, he spoke openly, bravely, and with humility. He never let cancer define him. He reminded everyone that life, no matter how fragile, was still a gift to be embraced with gratitude. Even in the midst of his battle, he continued to inspire. His final public message to the world was simple, yet profound. Be kind, be compassionate, and never forget that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you don't see. These words encapsulated everything his life stood for. They weren't just advice. They were a reflection of the way he had lived, listening with empathy, ruling with fairness, and always seeing the humanity in others. On August 20th, 2025, Judge Frank Caprio passed away peacefully at the age of 88. The news of his death sent ripples of grief far beyond Providence, Rhode Island. Across the world, people mourned a man they had never personally met but deeply admired. In Rhode Island, the mourning was especially heartfelt. The governor issued a statement calling him a treasure, recognizing not only his years of service as chief judge, but also his extraordinary impact as a public servant. Flags across the state were lowered to half-staff, a gesture of respect for a man who had become part of the very identity of the community. But while official honors were meaningful, they only told part of the story. Judge Caprio's true legacy was not found in proclamations or ceremonies. It was found in the millions of lives he touched, ordinary people who felt a little less alone, a little more understood because of him. For decades, Judge Caprio sat behind a courtroom bench. Yet, what the world saw through Caught in Providence was not just a judge administering the law. They saw a man who believed in the power of mercy. To a struggling parent, he was a source of relief. To a veteran, he was a voice of gratitude. To a child, he was a friend and playmate who let them bang the gavel. To viewers around the world, he was a reminder that kindness could coexist with authority. And so, when news of his passing spread, the tributes weren't about the technicalities of law or the efficiency of his court. They were about humanity. People wrote about the tears they shed when he forgave someone's fine, the laughter they shared watching a child help him with a ruling, and the comfort they felt seeing fairness wrapped in compassion. It is rare for a local judge to become a global figure. Yet Judge Caprio achieved this without ever seeking fame. He became an international icon, not because of dramatic trials or sensational cases, but because of his genuine heart. His life was proof that leadership does not always come from commanding authority. Sometimes it comes from simple acts of empathy. He showed that justice with a heart is not weakness, it is strength. In a world often filled with harshness, his courtroom became a sanctuary of understanding. Even in death, his words and example continue to inspire. Teachers use his clips to show students the value of compassion. Parents share his videos with children to teach them kindness. Strangers encourage one another online, quoting his reminders about unseen battles. The eternal gavel of compassion. As Rhode Island bid farewell to its most beloved judge, the world remembered him not with silence, but with gratitude. His voice, his laughter, and his gentle wisdom still echo in the countless recordings watched by millions. Judge Frank Caprio may no longer walk among us, but his spirit endures. His legacy isn't bound by a courtroom or a television program. It lives in the kindness we show one another, in the compassion we extend to strangers, and in the courage to look beyond a mistake and see the human being behind it. In the end, his life reminds us of one powerful truth. The law can make us accountable, but kindness makes us human. Frank Caprio didn't just change the way cases were handled in a courtroom. He changed how people all over the world viewed justice itself. In a system where laws are often seen as cold, rigid, and unbending, Judge Caprio reminded us that the law could also be human, warm, and compassionate. For decades, he sat on the bench in Providence, Rhode Island. But what made him different wasn't the authority of his gavel. It was the gentleness of his heart. Most people imagine a courtroom as a place of tension. The defendant is nervous, the judge is stern, and the outcome is either punishment or relief. But in Judge Caprio's courtroom, there was something more. There was often laughter, understanding, and even tears of joy. He had an extraordinary ability to see beyond the case file. To him, every person standing before him wasn't just a number or a violation. They were a story, a struggle, and a human being. A single mother, working 2 jobs, who couldn't pay a traffic fine. Caprio forgave her debt with kindness, recognizing that her challenge wasn't recklessness but hardship. A veteran who once risked his life for the country. Caprio didn't just rule on his ticket. He thanked him for his service with genuine respect. And when a small child accompanied their parent to court, Judge Caprio often invited them up to the bench, letting them bang the gavel and help with the case. The world often sees power as the ability to punish. But Judge Caprio showed us a deeper truth. Sometimes the greatest power a judge has is the power to forgive. Forgiveness doesn't erase responsibility. It recognizes that behind every mistake, there's a person who deserves to be heard. By choosing compassion, Judge Caprio turned punishment into an opportunity for growth. This approach didn't weaken justice, it strengthened it. People walked out of his courtroom not only relieved of their burden, but often inspired to be better. Instead of resentment, they left with gratitude. Instead of shame, they left with hope. That is a rare gift for a judge to give. What began as a small municipal courtroom in Providence became a global classroom of kindness, thanks to the show caught in Providence. Millions of viewers around the world tuned in, not for dramatic trials or shocking scandals, but to watch simple, everyday cases transformed into unforgettable moments of humanity. Clips of his rulings went viral on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. Comments poured in from every corner of the globe. People in countries far away who didn't even understand American traffic laws, but who understood the universal language of kindness. They saw a judge who laughed with people instead of mocking them, who gave breaks instead of lectures, who believed in second chances. For many, Judge Caprio became a symbol of the kind of justice they wished every system could have. Judge Frank Caprio passed away at the age of 88, leaving behind not only a career of public service, but a legacy of compassion that few judges in history can match. Rhode Island honored him officially, but his real memorial lives in the countless people who were touched by his kindness. Every time someone forgives instead of punishes, every time someone chooses empathy over anger, his influence lives on. So today, when you watch one of those clips, Judge Caprio smiling, leaning forward to listen, or gently telling someone, "I'm going to give you a break," you are reminded of something bigger than just a courtroom case. You are reminded that humanity matters. You are reminded that the law doesn't have to be harsh to be effective. You are reminded that compassion can travel across borders, across cultures, and across generations. And most importantly, you are reminded that one man, in a black robe with a warm heart, proved to the world that justice and kindness can exist side by side. Rest in peace, Judge Frank Caprio, the nicest judge the world has ever known.